Which Side Podcast is a proud member of the Which Side Media Collective.
This week's episode is brought to you by Totes. Get your totes here. All month long, all the totes on the Which Side Media Collective store's website are only $7.50. So go to whichsidecollective.org and pick up the totes now. You know what? We're going to take off the promo code for you because you're too lazy to put it in anyway. whichsidecollective.org. This is episode 202. Yeah, we talk with Matt Blackwell, author of the fiction novel Beef. I really love the idea of this book. I don't want to give too much away, but it's set in a future where people just don't eat animals anymore, and they kind of use old footage of people eating animals as like snuff films, right? Like these gory, hoary films that they would go watch. But that's like a subset of the story. There's a whole other top side of the story which goes into the idea of relationships and infidelity and what that is and how close can you get without being. It's fantastic. You'll just listen to the interview, you'll get all the deets you need, and then you're going to go buy the damn book because it sounds fantastic and y'all are going to want to read it. So stay tuned for that. Hey Jordan, what news events do we have going on this week? This Friday, if you're on the internet, you can watch Life in the Slaughterhouse. It'll be broadcast for free for 24 hours. So just go to Culture Unplugged and we'll have the link in our show notes. You know, if you remember our interview with Sean Monson, the director of Unity and Earthlings, we talked about the opening scene inside Unity where it was just very gripping and very almost heart-wrenching. Probably one of the hardest scenes for me to get through, even though it wasn't gory. That scene is from this movie. So if you saw that, if you heard us talk about it, go check out this free screening. This week's listener shout out is brought to us by Charlotte Malerich. Charlotte, as always, said that we could say whatever we want. So this week we wanted to shout out Radical Media. Especially want to shout out some podcasts. Vegan Warrior Princesses Attack is a great podcast. We just had them on. If you haven't listened to that episode, you should check it out. Also, the Ex-Workers podcast from Crimethinc is great. You should need to check that out if you've never heard of it. And then make sure you also check out a lot of the traditional media outlets that are out there that are radical. You know, all the presses that are out there. Some of the bigger ones that you should all be aware of are going to be like AK Press. You have Pioneer Press. And then there's Ashland Creek Press. For the slingshot this week, September 25th, 1975, the U.S. Senate finally made public 238 illegal FBI burglaries against dissident groups. 238 that they made public. If you don't think this shit is still going on, I mean, nowadays
you're lying to yourself.
Yeah, full on. Full on lying to yourself. Ugh. Fuck all governments. I sincerely hope you enjoy this episode.
Which side are you on? Which side are you on? Which side are you on? Which side? Which side are you on? 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 Which side are you on?
God, what a stressful time. Fucking hell, that was mad. I tried logging in to Skype before, and it says, oh, I don't know who you are. I don't know what you're talking about. And I spent half an hour entering new passwords, and then it says, yeah, no, you've used too many passwords. Try again in 24 hours. And I'm like, I don't have 24 hours. But somehow it's working now. So
hey, good. I'm glad. That's good. I was going to ask how your evening's going, but it's just morning for you, right?
Yeah, well, it's like 11. Yeah. Sort of pre-lunch type vibe.
So
we
how's
just
the
had
future?
Dinner.
Yeah, I just had dinner. Yes, I had dinner last night.
Future's good. Yeah, it's nice in the future, sunny.
That's always good.
That's a good.
And spring.
Oh, we're fall. Yeah.
Exactly.
Goddamn science.
Madness. I still don't quite get that, but yeah.
I mean, it has something to do with the rotation of the Earth and magnetic pole.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The angle of the axis of spin and the rotation. Yeah.
Yeah. My
I still don't
9-year-old
get it.
tried to explain it to me the other day, and she's like, "You're an idiot. Why don't you get this?"
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
So critiquing the books behind you, what actually is back there? I can't really see some of them.
There's a whole shelf of Ian Banks, Scottish writer. I love his stuff. He really deals with humans interacting with other humans in multi-generational sort of ways and dark secrets and stuff. A bunch of his sci-fi, Ian Banks' sci-fi, where it's the closest to a utopian kind of spacefaring kind of story. It's good stuff. It's good stuff. Basically, it's intergalactic anarchy where everyone just treats each other well because they're nice and they don't have any needs. There's no conflict. And so it's this system called the culture who go around meeting, terrible, horrible, violent people and trying to kind of, win them over. And occasionally, blowing them up and stuff, but yeah, when the carrot doesn't work, heaps of it's all good quality,
That sounds like right up my alley. I'm actually I'm horrible. I don't ever read nonfiction anymore, and it makes for a depressing kind of life. You mean fiction or non-fiction? Sorry, I only read nonfiction. Right, yes.
Yes. Yeah.
So you can see how depressed I am. I can't even remember what I'm saying.
I don't even know which one is which anymore.
Yeah, yes. No, but yeah, that sounds right up my alley. But I lately I'm just into lots of early anarchist writings. Not so much the ideology, but more of like the internal writings, communications, things like that.
Right. Yeah. Interesting. Yeah, I haven't. I don't really know much about anarchism, anarchy, all that stuff, other than the stuff that I just sort of think myself by looking around and thinking stuff. But I did study it for one semester back at uni, like 20 years ago, and there was the one lecturer who taught Buddhism and anarchy, and they were the two things that he taught. And we'd had the lectures in his little room, in his little office, and he had like ferrets and lizards and stuff running around, and it was cool.
That's interesting. What's fantastic about anarchism, it really meshes well with all of those other ideas of thought. But what's interesting about Buddhism, and specifically depending on where it's coming from, a lot of Buddhists come to that idea of that, you need to take your lot in life because you kind of got there through your previous actions in previous life, which kind of goes against a lot of anarchist thinking and tendencies of trying to, consistently better yourself and fight against the hierarchical structures that are there, because it's not necessarily your fault that they're there.
Yeah, sure. Well, yeah, I mean, I think it generally, I don't care whether people are Buddhist or whatever. I don't care what their religions and predilections are, as long as they're kind of trying to be nice to each other. As long as generally people are decent in a sort of pretty basic sort of way. I'm really not fussed.
Yeah.
I get just as much out of the 11 rules of the Church of Satan as I do from from Buddhism and
Well, that's because the 11 rules of Satan make sense.
Exactly, they're all pretty good.
They're all pretty good.
Except for the eat animals as it's all quite good except for that one, and that one is only like for me that's like an asterisk. It's like, well, eat animals if you got nothing else and you really you're going to die otherwise. In which case that's fair enough, I guess. Yeah. But in general, the 11 rules of the Church of Satan they're solid.
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah.
Mormons probably stole it from that.
So are you a religious person at all?
No. Well, none of it makes any sense.
Yeah.
So it's hard to get on board with that.
Were you raised that way, or did you come to that through your own education?
I think both. I think I did have an epiphany when I got to uni and discovered a lot of different branches. I was studying English and philosophy and linguistics and postmodernism, and I was studying a whole bunch of stuff, and they were all these completely different fields in the humanities, and none of them talked to each other. And they were all basically saying the same thing. And I had this intense epiphany. It was like, we make reality ourselves. What's happening? It was all just. So that's the closest I've had to kind of like a religious experience. My dad was always this kind of scientist, engineer kind of guy. Mum, I think she was religious, but just kept quiet about it, But not only, she was religious in some sort of really sort of quiet way, but she was also extremely superstitious. So I guess the two go together, don't know.
Yeah. So with that, what is your origin towards like animal rights?
Well, I like being nice and kindness and mutual respect and all that kind of boring sort of stuff. And so it really comes from that sort of angle. Like back in the day, I had this, I did eat people because that's what you're raised to do. But I didn't like it very much. And I remember being a little kid and Dad was explaining to me, this is how they, kill the animals and all that kind of stuff. And I remember bursting into tears and thinking, well, why are we doing it then? Why are we sitting down to dinner doing stuff that we know is terrible? That there was that cognitive dissonance thing where you're like, well, everyone's doing it, so it can't be bad. But it just sort of, so it always sat wrong. And then I met my partner in 94 and she was vegetarian, and then she went up and down, and we lived incredibly unhealthily and had terrible, terrible lives for quite a while. But then what made it all really click in my life was when I became a dad. And I saw my partner, breastfeeding my tiny little baby and going, that's for milk to exist, there needs to be a baby. Somehow I felt like an idiot that I hadn't realized it before, but it all clicked and it all came together, and I thought, this is really fucked. This is all just really, 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 really terrible. What are we doing? And so, yeah, that's kind of my journey.
That's really interesting. The idea that going through that childbirthing process is what would make that click. That's the first actual time I've heard that. Usually, it's
right. Okay.
I read a book or I watched a movie but having that connection is phenomenal. And going
well, it just seemed so clear. It just suddenly became really clear, and like in like a way that it's I think the reality is deliberately hidden. I think it's you never talk. In the mainstream media, it's never spoken that, here, this is the milk, this was going to go to a baby cow, but we took away the baby cow, and here, they don't talk about that. They don't, it's never, and at the same time, you're raised with cute little, the cow gives milk and the chicken gives eggs, that kind of vibe. They don't give it. They don't give it at all. We take it. So you're kind of raised in this unreality, and then it took the primal kind of this is real reality of being a parent to kind of knock it into me, I guess.
Did you make a change like overnight, or was there a gradual change at that point once you had that?
It was it was pretty great. It was like, okay, this is strange and weird and wrong and stuff. So it all sort of came from that. I mean, I think around the same time, my memory for actual events is fairly hazy, but I think Narlan, my partner, did the 30-day vegan challenge type thing, and so once she did that, then it was just like, but then after that, there was still a bit of like, we'll have eggs now and then, and it was a gradual thing, which is why I totally have I have great compassion for people who are like, I'm trying to be vegetarian, I'm trying to be vegan, I can't quite do it, but because I figure it's sometimes it's a long journey, sometimes it's not overnight, sometimes you've got to be gentle with people and go, look, if that's if you're not a demon because you have eggs once a week or something, it's like and that's better than someone who's flesh. You know, it's like there's a gradient, I think.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of people can forget that there is a gradient, and as soon as they become vegan, they're like, okay, everyone else is fucked. And I don't think it has to be that way. I think that actually sort of turns a lot of people off it.
You know, I was definitely that way. And that's interesting for me because, you know, I did take a big time between being vegetarian before being vegan, a couple of years, right? But then when I became vegan, then, you know, it was like, well, everyone needs to be vegan fucking now, right? It was really until I read studies that showed that people that make the slow change last longer and have a more deeper commitment than people that make a change overnight.
Right. Yeah. Well, it also depends on the motivation, because I think there's a lot of people who are like, I'm vegan and look at me, you know, like it's kind of, I think some people are doing it, probably a lot of people are doing it for like weight loss or for aesthetic kind of stuff or health and all these kind of abstracts. Whereas if you're doing it because you want to kind of reduce suffering, that's it's a more, I mean, that doesn't go away. You know, that's a real thing that you're trying to. It's bigger than yourself, sort of. I don't know. Like, I think environmental vegans would. That's, you know, the environment is kind of too big to really go to be a proper motivator for a lot of people. I don't know. Look, I think that the trying to reduce suffering and harm, you know, in a really quite clear way is, well, that's certainly that's how I look at it. It's anyway, yes, go on.
We've actually talked about it on the show before. Statistically, they say that lifestyle is vegans, they usually last around like 10 years. About 10, yeah. And then unless you get that ethical stance, then you're more likely to it fails pretty quickly if you don't have that ethical stance. Yeah.
Yeah, sure.
So how did your family take to your change, friends and family, like this almost sudden life change, or was it more gradual and just that was the final kicking point?
Well, I mean, yeah, we've always been the weirdos. So, you know, they're just like, oh, yeah, that's Matt and Arlen doing their weirdo thing. All right, fine. You know, I'm just so used to always being at that little edge of the bell curve. Well, you know, we're always over there, and so I think people just like kind of roll their eyes and go, you know, that's them. It is tricky though. Something, yeah, always, yeah, you know, whatever. You kind of, I have been ever since I was a small child. I remember looking around the schoolyard, being this tiny little person, going, what are these maniacs doing? What are they all these? Why would you? You know, and just going off and playing by myself in the sandpit, making sculptures. So, you know, I've never fit in anything, and I still don't fit in anything. So everyone kind of expects that. You know, it is weird when you go around. Like I find myself in a conundrum when I go around to a friend's place and they've got, you know, a little kid, and they're sort of, you know, the little kid's like, oh, why don't you eat what we're eating, or whatever, you know, why don't you eat meat? And I'm like, well, you know, I kind of feel like I owe the child the truth, but at the same time, I kind of, you know, I'm sitting there with my friends kind of who are, you know, stuffing their faces with corpse meat, and I'm like, you know, I don't know, I kind of don't want to step on their parental toes, but I also want to say, yeah, well, you know, I do it because I don't want to be an asshole, and here are your, you know, you're eating dead people, you know, so it's tough. It's tough, you know. You've just got to navigate that, like navigate anything else, you know.
Yeah, no, I totally feel the same way, especially around family, like nieces and nephews and things like that. It reminds me of a time. I think my daughter must have been, this was a while ago, I think she was 3 or 4 at the time, and we were at a very large family dinner, and, you know, all the kids sit at their little table, and all of a sudden she just screams, like at the top of her lungs, you know, such and such nephew just put a dead pig on my plate. Like, you know, just like, this is not okay. Yeah. Yeah, no, but you never want to feel like you're stepping on them, but you always want to be like, well, I don't want to hide the truth from you either, right?
Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
You've got to walk that line between trying to honor the parent but also honoring the child. And I kind of think that you have to honor the child more than you honor the parent, because the child is lying to children is just like I don't know, it's worse than lying to grown-ups, I think. I don't know, it's like, it's like you're the thing that helps them enter the world, and if you're filling them full of lies, then they're entering the world already damaged, sort of.
Okay, so saying that and being a father, what lies have you told your child then?
Well, I try not to tell any. This is why we can't do the Santa thing.
Yeah.
This is why we can't do fucking Santa. And everyone around us is like, what did you get for us? What did Santa bring you anything? Were you a good girl? And all this kind of stuff. And it's like, Indigo looks around and goes, do these grown-ups believe in Santa? Is that, is that, she knows that it's, I don't know. I don't know. I can't get into lying to my child at all. I mean, I think the closest I've got to untruth is I've omitted some stuff, like, the worst stuff of the world. She can learn the worst stuff later.
Yeah.
I don't have, I haven't talked about rape and pedophilia and stuff, I've, save that. Save that. Child, yeah. But otherwise, yeah, we're really honest. We try to raise her really honest, and she is the most honest being that has ever existed. She's awesome. She pulls us up. Yeah, I was checking the what is it, the ratings levels for my book, and she was really concerned that I was going to try to somehow cheat and make the ratings seem higher than they were or whatever. And I was like, no, I'm just checking it out, and it's just like,
That's phenomenal to hear. My daughter's very, very similar, and it's interesting. Like, we didn't lie to her about Santa Claus or anything either, but at about 4 years old, she was just like, all my friends believe, I'm just going to believe this fairy tale.
Yeah, okay.
And so like, now
even though she knows that it's not, she's still using the believe word.
She plays along, right? And now she's almost 10 and she's still playing along, and I don't know at this point if it's actually playing along or now if she's switched over, right?
Right,
but raised you knowing, like, you've known this for a long time. We don't hide this from you.
Yeah. Well, I've got a friend who no one told him until he was like 13 or something. And so he was like I don't know how you managed to keep believing in Santa at 13, but somehow they forgot to tell him or something, and he's like this teenager going, "Oh, I hope Santa brings me something," and he says it was devastating finding out that you've been lied to all your life about what, about what for? What was this lie for?
Yeah, what's the purpose? It makes no sense.
Yeah. And then there's, parents talk to us and they say, "Oh, how can you take away the magic? How can you, destroy the children's lives with, It's like, there's plenty of good stuff, we have a really good time. In fact, we have an actual good time instead of a fake good time, so.
I'm just curious if you experience the same thing. So, like, we encourage our daughter to challenge everything, challenge all authority, challenge all questions, right? And she is the biggest rule follower I've ever met in my life. Yes, right?
Absolutely.
Like, we're like, it's okay for you to challenge these things, and she's just like, but that's the rules. We're like, but why are they the rules? And she's like, but they're the rules.
Yep, absolutely. I know. Oh, yeah, we're both going, where did she come from? How did this happen? Because I don't know, you choose, you obey some rules, and you don't obey other rules. That's the way we live. So I don't know where she's got this from. Hopefully, she rebels at some point. I don't know, or not. I want her to be herself. And so, if she ends up being like a total rule follower, then good on her. But so this is my belief. This is I actually believe that all beings are innately anarchic and will, no matter what system they're in, will not obey all those rules. will, end up, like even people in this so-called democracy, there's people who, I'll speed, I'll drive faster than I should, or I'll park where I shouldn't, or I'm going to download this show, or, I'm going to smoke this drug. People do stuff. And then, anarchy is actually lived all the time by everybody, and not just humans, but all creatures. As soon as there's all the trees, like if there's a change in the environment, then they will adapt to fit that environment. It's about adapting and not that there are no rules. And if you act like there are rules, then that's your own form of anarchy. So I don't know. That's my personal theory. I call it bioanarchy, and I feel like all beings are inherently anarchic.
Yeah,
So,
I mean, it's just how you react when you're not forced to by an outside force, right? We're having that freedom of choice.
Yeah. Well, even when you are forced, I mean, that's the thing is, these laws are force-driven laws that we have, and yet people will still break them if they disagree. So even the threat of force doesn't make people obey laws.
No.
People are inherently, they'll decide for themselves what they want to do and what they will do. And, you can't kind of stop them by telling them they'll go to jail and stuff. I mean, it's just not that easy. It doesn't work. I mean, if it was that easy, the jails would all be empty. So
you brought up trying to fake the numbers on your book. Would you mind going into what your book's about?
Yeah. Well, I wasn't faking the numbers. Let's let you know. I wasn't. I don't even know how to. If I knew how to, maybe I would, but I didn't.
If you figure it out, let me know how.
Yeah, sure. I'm sure it's the biggest secret that Stephen King knows. It's set kind of slightly in the future, and the idea is that everyone just grows meat. They grow meat in their machines, or there's this one company, the beef company, who grows the meat in the machines. And so the book is set in a post-animal exploitation world where people, they look at their grandparents and go, I can't believe you used to fucking, eat corpses. Did you really do that, Grandpa? So it's set in this world where the idea of killing someone to eat their dead flesh is just absolutely abhorrent. No one, people talk about it in whispered, tones, and people watch old movies of families sitting down to roast chicken and stuff, and they watch it in slow-mo, and they watch it as they, it's like this hideous sort of snuff movie thrill people get from watching old footage of people eating meat and stuff. And so that's the world that it's set in. Because I thought rather than telling people, don't do this, because that never gets a very good response, As soon as you're telling people not to do something, then they almost arc up and want to do it more. So instead it's more like, just imagine what the world might be like if this was a thing in the past. So that's the world that it's set in. But it's not really about any of that. It's actually about this guy trying really hard not to have an affair and try to push it as close as possible, and investigating. It's kind of investigating the whether or not you can have a completely non-physical affair. Is it infidelity if you're thinking about the other person all the time but you're not having sex, for instance?
I'm just thinking about that right now. So one of my favorite fiction genres is dystopian and utopian. So it sounds really great.
Yeah, great. Oh well, it fits in well because the world will never be fully utopian and the world will never fully be dystopian. It's always going to be some blend of the two. And so my future world is one where the more you learn about the synthetic meat, the worse it ends up being. But I don't want to spoil anything. I want people to read the book and generate that figures of the sales. That's what I want. It's all about sales, man.
For sure. So where did the idea of this come from? Like, is this something you were actually struggling with in your personal life, or is this just birthed out of thin air?
Which bit? Growing meat.
No,
I grow meat all the time. I just around. Doesn't taste that good, but no. No, I've been thinking about all this, this stuff for years and years and years. I mean, the first draft of this book it was something like 2004 when I first tried to write this story. But there's just so many, things happen and so many approaches failed and stuff. I've just been, there's all sorts of ideas in this book. There's so many strange ideas. It was kind of like I thought I just chucked in everything that kind of fit in a way. But I think that. Infidelity is something that we think about a lot as in a particular social construction where there is a focus on monogamy. I think that people do, it's an interesting area. And I think the idea of I really liked the idea of this guy who's really, really happy with his wife and child. He's really, really, really happy in his life with his relationship. And yet he's still, because it's easy to there's so many fictions where someone's struggling at home and they're unhappy with their partner and that's why they have the affair. That's kind of like a pretty well-worn trope. But this idea of someone who's actually really, really happy, really, really in love, things are really good, and still he finds this other person fascinating and finds them thinking about this person all the time and wanting to be around them. And I'm not going to have an affair. I don't want to have an affair, but I really want to be around them all the time. And I thought that would be an interesting thing to explore.
I love exploring the idea of relationships, why they're defined a certain way, how individuals define their own relationships, but then they hide how they define their own relationships with other people. Just the nuances of how we form relationships towards the social constraints of quote-unquote monogamy, even though the vast majority of relationships aren't monogamous, right? Yeah. And also this idea that if you're, because we have so much focus on sex in terms of that defines, as soon as you can be best friends, as soon as you have sex, suddenly your relationship is different. And so this idea that this one sexual event can totally change your entire relationship. It's an interesting, what if it never gets to that? Then, because I figure that, I don't know, I feel like if you're obsessing about someone all the time, you're thinking about them all the time, you're wanting to hang out with them all the time, but you're not having sex. It's is it that different? Is that sex the only thing that makes you cheating, or are you cheating with your mind? Or I find it interesting. I don't know whether I answered it. I don't know whether in the book actually answers anything, but it's fun to explore. I like thinking about stuff more than giving a black and white answer. I don't have any answers, but I like questions a lot. Yeah, I always like the idea of is the sex actually important, right? Like in any relationship, the sex is really kind of, it helps in a relationship and it drives a lot of relationships, but if you actually time it out, it's very little actual time focused on it, right?
Yeah, well, maybe for you, Sunshine.
I don't know what you're talking about.
That was a joke. Yeah.
Yeah.
A couple of minutes max. No, I don't know. It is an interesting thing because, but I've also been thinking about this recently. When people say, I am attracted to women, that as a blanket statement isn't actually true. Like, there's lots of women that I'm not attracted to. It's a certain subset of, just people have this idea that, I'm heterosexual because I'm attracted to the opposite sex. It's not every member of the opposite sex you're attracted to. It's and at the same time, when you have a sexual relationship, like you say, that the sex isn't the only thing you're doing. Like, there's heaps of other aspects to a relationship, and there's heaps of other aspects to a person, and there's heaps of other aspects to an attraction. And I think we really like to try to simplify stuff that is actually super complicated. And so we, put these labels like, monogamous or affair or cheating or heterosexual or, homosexual or bisexual or whatever. We have all these terms, but the truth is actually way more complicated than any of the blanket terms ever actually cover, I think.
So what has been the general feedback you've gotten on your book so far?
Oh, it's been great. It's been really, really, really surprisingly good. There's heaps of 5-star ratings on Amazon and stuff, and all these people who I don't really know these people. Normally when I write fiction, because I've been writing for TV for 10 years, but that's really different to writing a novel, writing fiction stuff. So back in the day, I used to write novels, and I would pass them around my friends. And they'd say, oh, it's very good. And that would be the end of it, So this is the first book of mine that I've actually tried to get out to strangers and stuff. So it's been really scary because I don't know who these people are. I don't know what they like. I don't know. These people don't already like me. And so there's no vested interest for them to say, oh, that was very good. So I've been super stoked. I've been so happy by the responses I've got, because there's been all these strangers saying 5 out of 5, that was fucking great. So yeah, I'm really, really, really happy. And I've had some people who I know are meat eaters reading my book, and they get to the end and they're like, oh, and they actually look at their food differently, which I think that's a major success as far as I'm concerned. Having these people who are total fucking chicken leg kind of people, seeing it with different eyes, looking at this pile of legs going, oh my God, it's a pile of legs, rather than going, tasty chicken. So, I don't think I've affected these people's eating habits, but I've at least a tiny little bit affected their brains. And for me, that's exactly what I'm after. Because if you can affect someone's brains from within, rather tthan, telling them to come along with you and see through different eyes, rather than saying, stop eating chickens because they feel pain. How little impact that has. To people who are doing their thing, but to actually get into their brains and let them see through eyes that are different to theirs, and then have that kind of, I feel like there's some synaptic connections in the brain that have formed. I think I'm really, really stoked. Yeah.
So what was the process of writing for strangers as opposed to writing for your friends?
Oh, exactly the same. No, I never actually ever wrote I only ever wrote for myself.
Okay.
Because, I just want, in the end, I'm not very interested in other people's opinions. It's interesting to get them, but, and I think this is probably one of my greatest, what's the word for a good thing? One of my greatest good thing bits is not caring what other people think, but I also think it's one of my bad thing bits because I don't care what other people think. And so, it's I don't know. I think I'm a bit spectrum-y, but, that's not a bad thing either. No. And I've totally forgotten the question.
Oh, no, I just...
Writing for strangers. Strangers, yes. I've always written for myself, and so... it didn't change the way I wrote it all. I just write, for what excites me and interests me and surprises me, because I don't know what's going to happen a lot of the time. And it's like, oh, wow, that's awesome. And, just exploring, because I have these questions and I have these characters and I have these scenarios, but I don't know how they're going to tie together. I don't know what's going to happen. I don't know, so I get to discover that. And enjoy that and stuff. So having strangers read it was kind of scary just because I didn't already know what they were going to think. And I'm really excited and relieved that they've totally dug it. There was one reader in America who liked it so much she ended up buying 4 copies so she could give copies away to her friends and stuff. So,
Oh, awesome.
Yeah, totally. It's that word of mouth spreading of stuff. I don't know. So far there's only one person who hasn't loved it.
Negative Nancy's.
Yeah, they gave me a 2 stars. Two out of what's 2 stars. So I checked. Of course, I checked what they, and they don't read stuff that I like at all. So fuck them.
Fuck them. Yeah. So, no, I love the idea that the book isn't really focused on the animal aspect of it. That's just like, that's in the world, right? Like,
yeah,
it's just part of
exactly.
the world.
Yeah.
I really think that laying that groundwork more and more for people inside this kind of work will just get them thinking about that this is an actual possibility. There are possibilities of a world that exists like this.
Yes, yeah, exactly. And because that's the thing is, if you make the story about that, then it kind of ends up either really sort of preachy or just kind of painful. To have the story about someone who wants to save the animal. I don't know. That it's already only certain kind of people who are going to read that. People who already agree with you. No one. No carnivores are going to be going, oh, I really want to read a book about someone who saves the meat animals. That's not going to happen. So making the story about something else entirely and just setting that, in the world, I think in hindsight, that was bloody genius. It's not how that was not the intended. That was not what I meant for it to happen. But I'm glad that that's what happened because I think that's actually really cool.
So one of the things I love to ask people is there anything going on inside like the current movements that you're part of, like either that's animal rights or other social justice movements that you just wish wasn't happening, like things you would like to, something you would like to see change inside of these movements?
Well, I am a hermit who barely leaves the house. So it can go a week without me leaving the house at all. I live in the country far away from anybody. So I'm not really a member of any movements. I'm not a joiner. I don't really like people. I don't really like hanging out with people. I don't really like being outside of my little cave, really. So I don't know. I don't know what's happening in any movements. Whatever's happening in the movements, I'm sure there's some good stuff. I'm sure there's some bad stuff. It doesn't really affect me one way or the other. I don't really hang out with people. I think that's attached to the the Aspergery kind of gradient that I'm on. I think it's tied in with the not really caring what people think of me. I think it's it's all tied together into this one little kind of loving misanthropy kind of. I don't know. Yeah. I'm not really interested in movements and scenes and people and their lives.
You said you write for TV too, as well, right?
Yes, yeah.
So
that's true. That's what I said. Yes.
So how do you write for TV but also kind of hate people at the same time?
Well, that's where the joy comes from. That's where the gold comes from. The fucking. That's where the. I wrote for a long, long time for a show called Good News Week, which is kind of, I guess, it's like topical political comedy shows, mostly kind of written for topical political comedy shows, kind of like the Jon Stewart-y kind of angle, I guess, is the American version. I don't really watch TV either. I think that was actually, again, one of my strengths was that because I didn't watch TV and I didn't know what was going on, I don't involve myself with the media. I just, live in my little cave. And so the jokes that I would offer to the room would be jokes that the other writers didn't come up with because they're all going with the obvious angle because they know what's happening in the world, whereas I would have no idea. So I'd come up with my own little bizarre, obtuse little angle. And I think that was actually, one of my values was that I'd come up with something else. Write from home. Just have my own little angle on stuff. And as long as it's kind of funny-ish, it'll hopefully get on the show. The last thing I've written is a web series that should be coming out at the end of the month called Bruce. It's basically a share house comedy set in 1788 when Australia was invaded by the whites and totally the start of the fucking, obliteration of our native people and, So that's going to be fun. Great source of comedy, that one.
Oh God. So what really brought you into writing? Like how did you get into it, or is this just what you always wanted to do?
Always, ever. Oh yeah, always writing. I've always been writing ever since I was tiny, and looking at the other freaks in the playground going, what are they doing? I'd rather be writing. And so, yeah, I've always been writing. I would write short stories all the time. There was a lit teacher in high school where I'd write, I'd give her stories to read just for fun. I'd write, a new short story or two every week and give them to her. And, it's just all I've ever want to do is be a writer, In year 10, I remember going to my careers advisor. I don't know if you have them at your schools, but we had a careers advisor who was going to be able to help you get a job and stuff in the future, And I said, to her, I want to be a writer. And she said, Can you pick a real job? And unfortunately, I couldn't pick a real job. There's nothing else I'm good at. I'm not good at anything else. I'm good at writing, so I've just always wanted to write. So I used to write novels for fun, like I was saying. I used to write them for fun, pass them around my friends. There'd be like 5 people. They'd all read it. They'd all go, "That's awesome." Yeah. The end. I didn't want to send them out to anyone. I didn't want to have to go through publishers. I didn't want some editor to tell me how to fix my writing, I don't. Yeah, so I've always been writing. I've always been writing, and will always keep writing. You can't stop me.
Do you find that you're influenced by any other authors in particular?
Well, there was maybe 2 years when I didn't write, and that was when I was studying writing at uni, and that fucking absolutely killed it for me. And then out of that blank fug, I read Joseph Heller's Catch-22, and so that book, that made me go, oh, no, I need to write again. And so that actually reignited my writing ability. So I love that book. I've read a bunch of his other stuff, but nothing else is as good as that, except for his very last book. I don't know, no one's read Joseph Heller's very last book, but it's called The Portrait of the Artist as an Old Man, and it's all about this writer who his first book is super successful, and then all of his other books throughout his whole life, everyone's like, yeah, it's not as good as your first one. And it's basically his last book, and he's trying to write this one last book that's going to get people to know, because he knows that no matter what he does, he's going to get published. Everyone's going to publish it, and everyone's going to say, oh, it's no Catch-22. And that was his last book, and it's full of all these failed starts at trying to write this important, meaningful novel that, and of course it's no Catch-22. But so yeah, he was good. David Foster Wallace is great. I love his stuff. Ian Banks, the Scottish writer, I love all of his stuff. Kurt Vonnegut is superb. He can just nail the human condition. And his stories are really, really short, so I like that. Who else? They're the main ones. Who would you recommend? That's right.
I don't know.
That's right. You don't read fiction. That's right. Yeah.
Yeah. That's me. Yeah. You don't really read fiction, but I don't know. I just read a lot of dystopian things. I just pick them up, but I can't think of any authors off the top of my head.
Okay. All right.
So you said that when you were studying in uni that you didn't write at all, and you kind of like lost that passion for it. What made you lose it? Like, well, what about that process made you like really step away and be like, oh, I can't, like, fuck this?
I don't know. I honestly don't know. It was totally palpable though. It's the only, like, because I've been writing ever since I was a kid. I've been writing, and then there's this window where I didn't write. There's just this. It's like that little censored bar, just bling in that one spot. It's just that one time that I didn't write, and I don't know what it was exactly. I wonder whether or not it was the fact that I was going to be marked on it. Maybe that paralyzed me, or maybe it was the fact that they wanted us to write in these different styles and stuff. They wanted to, write a detective noir fiction, and it's like, well, that's not what I write. It's not what I'm interested in writing, So maybe it was because I was being forced to write in styles that were uncomfortable for me, because maybe it's because I had been writing for so long that I already had my own thing, and so I was trying to not write like I write. I really don't know. I think it's probably a combination of those two things there.
Like, how long did it take you to actually find your voice in your writing? Because, I mean, some people can go their whole life and not really find that voice.
Yeah, well, I mean, I feel like Beef, the one that I wrote, the one that I'm talking to you about, this novel, I feel like this is probably the most me-ish book I've ever written, because I tried a few times to write it and I couldn't get into it. I couldn't write it for some reason. And then I was listening to someone talking about writing, and they said, don't tell me the story, show me the story. And I thought, oh yeah? And so I thought, well, fuck you, I'll tell the story. I'm not going to show you the story at all. I'm just going to tell the story, and you can all get stuffed. And so I just told the story as like those old fairy stories where once there was a prince, and once there was a princess, and once there was a creepy just describing what happened. I'm not going to show you shit. I'm just going to fucking tell you the story. And it came out, and because it was just me telling the story, it's totally just in my voice. And so I think that really helped me get this because everyone is told how to write, and there's all these rules of writing, and where you need to have the twist and where you need to have the turn and where the arc ends and all this kind of stuff, and all that stuff fucking shits me so much. For me, if you're an artist and you're trying to create, the thing that holds you back more than anything else is doing it the way that these other people have told you how to do it, and they've worked out the averages of how a story needs to be told, and they can, hate it. It just irks me no end. So in this story, very little happens, which I like. Not much happens at all. It's pure. It's a week max. There's nothing much happens. It's mostly just in the head of the main dude, and him trying to, going, well, on this hand, maybe I shouldn't, but on that hand, oh no, maybe, So it's all this internal dialogue. Not much happens, and it's all told like a story, because you're a teller. You're not a story shower, you're a storyteller. Tell that story. Tell the story. Yeah, that's my personal opinion.
It seems like, one of the bigger driving forces that you've mentioned is you telling somebody else, don't fucking tell me what to do, right? Like, I'm going to do what I want to do. So
I think it's a failing. It's a real bad failing that I'm just an instinctive rebel, and it's a dumb thing to be. It's really dumb to be that, because people often have very good ideas, but I just find it really, really hard to go, okay, I'll do that. I find it hard. I'm just bad to be around, really. Anyway, continue. You were saying something.
Yeah, I was going to say, how does that play out into the other aspects of your life? Because I find myself very similar. Like, if you tell me to do something, I'm just like, fuck you, no. Or, tell me I can't do something, I'm like, fuck you, I'm going to.
Well, it's so dumb. It's so dumb. It's such a terrible thing. Think about things, sure, pause, sure, but don't just reactively just do the opposite. How dumb is that? Anyway, good. My life is good. Like I said, I don't leave the house very much, and I don't interact with people very much, so I don't really have a problem.
So how can people actually go get the book? You mentioned it being on Amazon. Is that like the main avenue right now? Well,
there's like the ebook version, the 99-cent ebook version, but I don't know ebooks. I don't know how ebooks work. I don't know why anyone would buy an ebook, but they can get my book if that's how they roll. That's fine. I'm sure it's perfectly fine. But there's also the print on demand for a good, solid, holdable, paperweight type, paperback book. And that's through lulu.com. But apparently people have Googled Matt Blackwell and lulu.com and not found my book. So I don't know. It's all a bit confusing. But it is available print on demand. I like the idea of print on demand because if someone wants to read it, then they can print up a copy and there it goes, instead of having a huge pile of wasted resources sitting there. I like the idea of print on demand. I think that's the way of the future.
Sorry. I was going to say, so did you set all this up yourself? Are you completely self-published then and setting it up yourself? Yeah.
Yeah, totally self-published and totally, trying to fucking do the media thing and tell people about it. It's all horrible and terrifying and very anti-human. But, I kind of figure I have to do it because otherwise, no one's going to know about the book. But yeah, cool. I tried to get it through published through traditional means. I started off that way, and it was just taking so long because the publisher will say, well, just send us that. You send us the book. Don't send it to anyone else, and we'll get back to you in 6 months. So you try to do, oh, no, we like your writing, but the book is not right for us at this time. And so then you send it out to someone else. Oh, you can't send it to anyone else, then that's going to be 6 months. So there's a year gone by, you send it to 2 publishers. So I could just feel like, because it's sort of, the book is set slightly in the future, and I could see, every day it felt like there'd be some new report about, we've made the perfect meat in our laboratory now. It's just like, oh man, I don't want this to be a historical novel. I want this to be a future novel. I want this to be about potential, not, some shitty fucking book that's about things that are happening now. So I just felt like there was a race, and that I was losing the race if I was going down the traditional publishing method. Mm-hmm. And so I thought, well, I'll just, and also I'm not sure how long traditional publishers are going to be around for. It feels to me like it's one of those things where, the empire is crumbling, and, I don't know, that they're not sure what their future is, and so they're definitely not willing to invest in your future unless you're already immensely popular. And if I was already immensely popular, then I wouldn't need a publisher. So it's this, I just thought, maybe try the self-publishing route, because at least that way it's out. I can say it was out at this date. Now, it can age and become dated, but at least it's out.
So far through the process, is this something you would want to do again as far as the self-publishing side of it goes?
I'd like someone else to do all my publicity. That's what I'd like. I'm not, to tell a reclusive troglodyte to go and interact with people and tell them that his book is really good. It's just not, I'm really not good at talking to people. I'm really not good at schmoozing and networking and all the fucking stuff that you're meant to do. I can't do that stuff. So it'd be really, really nice if I had like an agent or a publicist or a whole team of, people who could do all that stuff, and I could just write, because that's the bit I'm good at. I'm good at the writing. I'm terrible at everything else. So yeah, I don't know if that really answers your question, but that's what I would like.
Well, I was gonna say, like, that you completely fooled me, because I think this has been a fantastic conversation, and I want to read the book now. So yeah. Well,
then this advertising has worked.
It's a bit of win.
My corporate brainwashing has worked. That's all I'm here for. I just want to, get people's dollars so that I can, snort it all off, fucking, I don't know, No, I just would like people to read the book, really. I don't think that's why I've got the 99-cent version, because I figure if someone has no money, I'd still like them to be able to read it. Because in the end, I would rather more people read the book than give me money. I don't need money, really. I mean, I'm extremely low maintenance. Like I said, I don't leave the house. All I need is to pay for electricity. That's about it, really. And I generate a lot of that with the solar panels, so I don't even need that much electricity, really. Fairly self-sustained. All I would like is for people to read the book, be nicer to each other as a result. If that happens, that'd be nice too. Yeah.
Well, thank you so much for spending a little bit pre-afternoon for you with us. We end every episode saying "fuck, shit, damn." Would you mind saying?
Yes, I've heard this. I'd like to know what that means before I say it.
It literally means "fuck, shit, and damn." It started out as the dumbest thing in the world, and it caught on.
It was a joke to try to make sure that we always got the explicit rating on our podcast. And it just
so what's the down, though? Because I know the expression "fuck shit up." I'm quite familiar with that. What does "fuck shit down" mean?
Oh, no.
What does that mean?
Sorry, it's "fuck shit" and then "damn." Like,
fuck, comma, shit, comma, damn. Oh, yeah, no. Yeah. Fuck, shit, damn.
Awesome. Thank you so much.
Pleasure. Thanks so much for having me on. Like, seriously, you guys are much more interesting than I am. And I wish the interview had been the other way around, really.
This week you heard The Unfallen Kingdom by Gramatik.
Right now you're listening to
Midnight Feast by Mr. Scruff. iTunes. As always, just go rate and review us on iTunes. It helps us out so much. And then once you do that, tell a friend to listen. Or if you don't have iTunes, or you're just don't want to do it for some reason, just tell a friend to listen.
Yeah, telling a friend to listen is also another great way. It helps spread the word. If everyone just told a friend, then the world would be a happy place.
Happy.
Like, literally, that's what happens.
Because then you'd have a friend to talk to.
Did you listen to that episode? Oh, yeah.
God, that was terrible, wasn't it? Yeah, I hated Jordan in that episode.
Yeah. Jeremy's voice is awful.
It's true. It is. It gives me a headache. See, these are the conversations you have with a friend.
And speaking of friends, you should be our friend on social media.
And you can tell me how horrible my voice is.
We're on all the socials that you're on. Probably not.
Google Plus.
Kinda. So just go to whichsidepodcast.com, click on the social tab, add us, be our friends. We talk about stuff on social media that we don't talk about on the show. Often. By often, that's every day.
And sometimes we use hashtag FSD.
Often. Hashtag often.
Hashtag FSD.
Hallelujah.
It's not that funny. I'm leaving it with a snort.
Whichside Podcast is hosted and produced by Jordan Halliday and Jeremy Parkin of the Whichside Media Collective, with web design by Jordan Halliday and sound design by Jeremy Parkin. Booking by Mari Halliday. Theme music by Commandantes. Go to whichsidecollective.org to check out the other shows in the collective. As always, fuck shit damn.